Private and local order of the day number 1.
New Zealand Mission Trust Board Otamataha Empowering Bill, first reading.
I call the honourable member to Uraroa Flavel. Tēnā koe, Mr Flavel.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Kanui te mihi kia koe tēnei rā.
Kei te pai.
Mr Speaker, I move that the New Zealand Mission Trust Board Otamataha Empowering Bill be now read a first time. I nominate the Māori Affairs Select Committee to consider the bill. Ka nui taku mihi kia koutou e whakarongo mai nā ki roto tauranga mua nei tēnei wā. Ko te tūmana kuia, ko aro mai koutou ki te ia o tēnei o ngā kōrero. Te tika ngai ka whakahokia tēnei wāhanga whenua ki etahi o koutou. Hoeno konei te mihi o te ngākau kia koutou katoa tēnā koutou. Mr Speaker, as I stand to open the discussion on this bill, I want to firstly acknowledge Albert Puhirake Ihaka, the Chair of the Otamataha Trust and promoter of the bill. His leadership and perseverance in bringing this bill to fruition, I think, should be commended. In achieving this significant moment in the statute, recognition must also go to Mr Alan Tate, the Trust Administrator, who has managed the preparatory work to get here today. He has liaised with the Department of Internal Affairs, Land Information New Zealand, Trinity Wharf, Te Pihopa o Aotearoa, the Registrar General, the Solicitor General, Crown Law, all agencies who have a direct interest in this bill. And I want to also acknowledge all of the trustees, Mōrehu Nātoko Rahipere, Desmond, Matakōkiri Tata, Joanne Ngāpeti Gia, Peri Reweti Kohu, Sylvia Hemoata Willison, Rena Uruhina Bennett, Raywin Ngā Kumama Keith, and William Charles Reti McGuigan. Mr Speaker, I first met the trustees in September 2009 to discuss their proposal to introduce a private bill to vary the terms of a trust affecting land at Dive Crescent in Tauranga Moana. 4 years later, of course, it's a great day today to see this bill finally come before the House. But if I thought 4 years appears to be a significant time to wait, sir, it pales into insignificance with the 117 years that these people have had to wait. For this bill, in acknowledging and recognising the mana of Ngāti Tapu and Ngai Tamarawaho, also appreciates their status over land which has been held by the New Zealand Mission Trust since 1896. Mr Speaker, the bill transfers land in Tauranga and other property from the New Zealand Mission Trust to the Otamataha Trust so that it can be used for the beneficiaries of the Otamataha Trust rather than on the 1896 Trust. At the heart of the bill then, we're talking about two trusts. The Otamataha Trust was established by the hapu of Ngāti Tapu and Ngai Tamarawaho to own and manage land and other property acquired through the historical common interests of those hapu in Tauranga Moana. The New Zealand Mission Trust Board is a body incorporated under the Religious, Charitable and Educational Trust Boards Incorporation Act 1884. The purpose of that act was to hold the assets of the board on trust for the spiritual benefit and spiritual instruction of Māori people in the North Island, or failing that, the evangelisation of heathen races in any part of the world. Mr Speaker, we have to remember that we're talking here about 1884, and the Mission Trust Board itself was a byproduct of the Church Missionary Society. The Church Missionary Society was formed out of the global goal to send the missionaries to, quote, to Africa and the rest of the heathen world to propagate the knowledge of the gospel among the heathens. End of quote. Sir, it would be a little bit remiss of me as the co-leader of the Māori Party to avoid the obvious, which is to comment on the use of the word heathen to marginalise, oppress and discriminate Māori as the other. It fits within the context of political, social, economic and cultural discrimination of the day, a time in which tangata whenua were described in other comparable terms, such as the noble savage and the other terms denoting an immoral status. Mr Speaker, it was anticipated that the introduction of the gospel to Indigenous people would transform them from the supposedly heathen state to a world of civilization. The process of converting Indigenous populations to the doctrine of Western Christianity was meant to achieve beneficial return for the native congregation. It's outside of the scope of this bill, sir, to pass any judgment on the church, a missionary society, other than to note its role in the land in question. Mr. Speaker, the Church Missionary Society was established in Tauranga in 1835. In 1838 and 1839, the Society purchased 2 blocks of land at Te Papa, the Te Papa Peninsula being the site in central Tauranga today. The 1838 purchase was carried out by deed by Reverend A.N. Brown on behalf of the Church Mission Society, charged with purchasing land at Tauranga, including Otamataha from tangata whenua. The 1838 transaction, however, has never been accepted by tangata whenua as a sale of the land to the Church Missionary Society, and therefore therein lies the genesis of this bill. Mr. Speaker, for the core issue at the heart of this bill is to recognise that the awarding of the Crown grant in 1852 was in itself contrary to the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. In 2004, sir, the Waitangi Tribunal, in its Te Raupatu o Tauranga Moana report on the Tauranga confiscation claims, after considering the manner in which the Crown grant for the land was awarded to the Church Missionary Society, concluded, and I quote, "We find that Godfrey failed to ascertain and acknowledge the conditional nature of the transactions under Māori customary law, and that he wrongly concluded that the CMS, Church Mission Society, had fully and fairly purchased the whole of the area. The Crown, in accepting Godfrey's recommendation and finally awarding the CMS a Crown grant for the whole area, was therefore in breach of the treaty principle of active protection." End of quote. So, 15 years after the awarding of the Crown grant, the Church Mission Society in 1867 gifted the Crown 4/5 of the land, and military settlers were settled on it. On the 28th of September 1896, the residue of that land, including Otamataha, was transferred by the Church Mission Society to the New Zealand Mission Trust. Fast forward a century, and in 1996, sir, the New Zealand Mission Trust Board handed back control of the land to the new trustees appointed by Ngāti Tapu and Ngai Tamarawaho. Mr. Speaker, that all appears to be very positive, but there was a catch. Although the new trustees had control of the land, they are still obliged to use the land with the new Seabull Hotel built on it. The trust would collect the ground rent from that hotel. It has always been the intention of the two trusts that it be changed so that the tūhapu can benefit from it directly. So, 2 years after the control of the land was passed over, in a deed dated 20th September 1998, the then trustees of the New Zealand Mission Trust Board, in recognition of the manner and the process by which the land was acquired from tangata whenua, resigned as trustees. They were immediately replaced by new trustees representing the hapu of Ngāti Tapu and Ngai Tamarawaho. This bill then puts right a wrong that occurred over a century ago. Mr. Speaker, in the letter that Albert Ihaka wrote to the Clerk of the House of Representatives in submitting this bill, he summed up the purposes in one clear statement. He said, "The reason for this bill is to enable property to be used for the benefit of people and hapu from whose tupuna that property was originally derived." End of quote. So that property will be transferred from the charitable trust that currently holds that property to a new common law trust. The beneficiaries of this new trust, and indeed this bill, will rightfully be the descendants of the tupuna from which the property was originally taken. And so, ultimately, the history and the context of this bill rests with the mana of Ngāti Tapu and Ngai Tamarawaho. Mr. Speaker, we look forward to hearing more from these hapu about their historical common interests in Tauranga Moana and at Te Papa. That common interest extends from Tauranga Harbour to the Waikareao estuary and includes all the land north of that line, including reclaimed land at Sulphur Point and the adjacent harbour bed. At the Select Committee process, sir, we also will learn more about the significance of their whakapapa to Tapu Kino in the case of Ngāti Tapu and Tahuri Wakanui in the case of Ngai Tamarawaho. So, sir, my fervent wish is that these people who have waited well over 100 years for justice to be done will now be able to see this injustice righted in as quick a time frame as can be realistically achieved. I commend this bill to the House today.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call the Honourable Tau Henare. Tēnā koe, Mr Henare.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. My colleague Te Ururoa Flavel from the Māori Party sums it up in the nicest language possible. But to think that in the year 2013 we are in the House before you, sir,